Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca, otherwise known as Knit Array online, and today I'm going to be bringing to you a pattern roundup video. So I'm going to be sharing, I think there's around 40 of them, 40 free knitted ornament patterns for a festive holiday season. So I've been, I think, kind of teasing some ornaments that I've been knitting on my Instagram. I've been busy working away. I have a little basket here of knitted ornaments. So I mentioned in my podcast, but I got a Christmas tree, and so I only had one ornament at the time. I've now since created some more and my parents also gave me some ornaments as well, but I really wanted to make it a goal this year to knit as many ornaments as I can for my tree. It kind of led me down on a bit of a rabbit hole on Ravelry. So I initially wanted to make this pattern roundup of free knitting patterns for just generally for a festive holiday season, but I really got sidetracked and started looking at so many ornament patterns. So this video is just going to be focusing on those, and then maybe in the future I can make another pattern roundup of other knitting accessories for Christmas as well. I said I was going on a little bit of a deep dive onto Ravelry of different ornaments, and when I was categorizing them on my Ravelry bundle, I was getting a little bit overwhelmed. And so I decided to break up this video and how I'm going to present the ornaments in more of a thematic way. So I've created different pattern themes and categories. So I'm just going to read it off I have my laptop down here. I think for this video, I'm going to be referencing a lot on my laptop, so I might not be looking directly at the camera. It's just because I have a lot of information and I want to present it as efficiently as I can. So the themes are food, animals, knitwear, folksy, and traditional, which I feel like kind of sound like emoji categories, but I just thought, I know people like to decorate their trees in a particular way, so there might be a specific theme that you're looking for ornaments, or maybe one of the categories just interests you a little bit more. So I decided I'm gonna be breaking them out into those different themes. I also wanted to note that this is a pattern roundup that is obviously not exhaustive. I've definitely tailored this roundup to be patterns that I would personally knit myself. And so a lot of these patterns are based off of my personal preferences, what I like to knit, what I wanted my tree to look like. I am going for, I guess, more of a playful, kind of, I guess, folksy, kitschy maybe tree, so lots of pops of colors, something a little bit more playful. I guess I'm not really looking for those super realistic ornaments, which I know are definitely out there. I wanted things that were a little bit more fun and playful. Before I get into the roundup, I feel like this introduction is already getting kind of long, but I just wanted to give some tips or things that I found helpful when I was knitting my ornaments. So I just wanted to share a little bit about the tools that I used, some of the techniques. So I have my tools over here. So the first thing is the knitting needles. I have a mix of patterns in this roundup. Some of them are worked in the round and some of them are knit flat, but generally I found it was really helpful to work on double pointed needles for most of the ornaments. If I was knitting it in the round, then definitely I prefer to use DPNs instead of magic loop. But even when it was knit flat, because there's such a small size, that it really is helpful when you are knitting them on smaller needles as well. You could definitely use, if it's knit flat, any needle that you have on hand, but I just found these smaller sizes to be a bit more convenient, and I like using wooden needles, so I have my Wicca needles. The second is just certain materials that you need if you're going to stuff the ornaments. So a lot of the patterns in this roundup end up being more of like a 3D shape because they're stuffed. I just like the look of them and I think they're fun. So what you need for that is some polyfill or stuffing. So I just have it in this bag that I have here because I didn't go to the store to get polyfill. I actually had a pillow insert already from a previous project. It came in a pack of 2, so I just broke into that pillow insert and took out all of the stuffing. So I've even seen people use yarn scraps that they just cut into very small pieces to use as stuffing as well. So there's the stuffing, and then some of the patterns that I'm going to be mentioning also have beads, which I've come to really love on ornaments. I just think they're very cute, they're very fun. So for example, one of my favorite ornaments that I've made so far is this donut, and I sewed on these beads afterwards. So I had these beads before. They're really old. I think I got them as a child for crafting, and then I just pulled them out to use now because I thought they'd work great for sprinkles. But a lot of the beads are very small. So a regular darning needle that you would use to weave in ends doesn't actually feed through the bead, it gets stuck. So if you are thinking of using beads for your knitted ornaments, I would definitely recommend going out and getting beading needles. I really don't know too much about beading needle sizes or anything like that. I just went to Michael's and tried to get the thinnest needle that I could find. So these are, yeah, 6 beading needles. I think I was reading at the back that they are a size 11. Yeah, that's what it says on the package. It says size 11, and I think the higher the size, the smaller the gauge of the needle. So it's kind of hard because you can't pull it out at the store and test if it's going to fit through the bead, but just look for something that's as thin as possible because your regular darning or sewing needles might not work. In the same vein, you also need to use some sewing thread. So I just got a package. It was really pretty inexpensive. Just got a package of different colors, and these colors I try to match with the bead that I'm sewing on. Or if it's multicolor, I'll just use the white. And then a needle threader as well. I didn't have this. I first bought the really thin gauge needles, and then I realized, how am I gonna get the thread through the tiny hole on the needle? So definitely need a needle threader. I wanted to use my scrap yarn to make it the most cost effective as possible, but also just to stretch my creativity and try and improvise with different colors and textures. But there were just other costs like the beads and the beading needles that were just a little bit unexpected, and I realized it at the time. So I thought I would just mention it here for everybody so you can be aware as you're thinking of these plans. And the last thing I wanted to share before jumping into the roundup is some of these patterns are knit flat and seamed. And I feel like before I started knitting ornaments, I really shied away from knitting anything flat, but I've come to realize that knitting flat isn't that bad, and it actually can be beneficial for some of these ornament projects. So some of them are knit flat and then you seam it at the end, and then you stuff it as well, and then you finish seaming. And I found that I was trying to hack some of these ornament patterns to be in the round, which is definitely more convenient, but there's certain patterns where you really might want to knit it flat because it's easier to pin into shape if you do want to block and wash it. So for example, again with this knitted donut pattern, it is knit flat and then you seam it, but when I was knitting it, I found that the shape of the donut was kind of wonky. So by knitting it flat, I was able to block it and then pin it into shape on my blocking mat before I seamed it. So it looks like this, and then you seam it afterwards. And sometimes there's just a time and place for knitting flat. So I just wanted to mention that as well. If you really don't like knitting flat, but you see a pattern that you wanna knit, it's okay. And actually it can work out better in the end. I have also linked 2 videos below that really go into how to seam up a piece that's been knit flat. So there's 2 different seams that I kind of had to learn through these ornaments, is seaming along the top here, along the stitches, and then seaming along the side. So I believe they're also called Mattress Stitch, but it's just done in a different way. So those 2 videos I'll link down below. They're pretty short, but really informative, and I think that they were the easiest to help me learn those techniques as well. And lastly, I guess, which leads to my last final pen I just thought of right now, is this knitting ornaments is a great way to experiment with different techniques. Like I said, I really didn't like knitting flat, and I've come to really appreciate it, but I also learned different techniques as well, like knitting color work, knitting with beads, different types of stitches. One of the patterns I'm going to mention has a little bit of a bobble stitch, so I think it's a really low entry way to start learning these new techniques and see if you enjoy them for larger projects. Well, if that wasn't a long enough introduction, let's start with the roundup. So like I said, I have my computer down here. I'm just going to be referencing it. And then I'm going to be having the image of the ornament over here while I'm talking. And if I have knit it before, I might pull it up quickly as a sample, but I might save going into like a deeper dive of my experience knitting all of these ornaments till maybe my next podcast, because otherwise I think this video is just going to be way too long. So hopefully this is just a quick roundup of all the patterns, just to spark some inspiration for you. So the first category is food, and this is in no particular order, but I wanted to share this category first because I really enjoyed making all of these ornaments, and I just thought they were also hilarious. And when I mean hilarious, I mean it in the best possible way. Like I said, I really wanted a very playful tree, so I just really enjoyed finding all of these ones. So the first one is the Tiny Little Donuts pattern. It's patterned by Julie Williams. It's knit on fingering weight wool on 2.25mm needles, and this pattern is knit flat and seamed. So I'll show this pattern for the third time, but it's this pattern right here. So you knit it flat, then you seam it, and then you add the beads. And I thought this was gonna be a little bit small for an ornament, so I actually modified this pattern a little bit to make it a larger size than what's in the pattern. I liked all the sprinkle ideas that they gave for the ornaments as well. So they have these tube beads, but then they also have some embroidery, or maybe it's applied crochet to also add icing as well. So I really like those ideas. I would knit this pattern again, but maybe try to knit it in the ground and see how it turns out. But knitting it flat and actually seamed was quite quick, and this is probably up there in my favorite ornaments that I've knit so far. The second pattern is also a donut pattern, but it's knit on a different gauge in case you have that yarn on hand. So this pattern is called Donuts, or Donuts exclamation point, by Yarnspirations, and it uses worsted weight yarn on 4mm needles. This pattern is also similar to the other one, knit flat and seamed. So I would have knit this Yarnspirations one if I wanted it to be a little bit larger. When I was looking at the project pages, this one is bigger than the Tiny Little Donuts pattern. So maybe if I had a slightly bigger tree and I just wanted a bigger ornament, then I would pick this one. This pattern also has the tube beads as well. So it's just really fun. And I would definitely sew the tube beads on after blocking with a beading needle, if I didn't mention that before, but you apply all of these beads after you're finished knitting. The third pattern is a freehand pattern that I made myself, but I decided to include it in the video because I put down the instructions of how I made this in my Ravelry notes. So technically it's a free pattern, but it was something that I freehanded myself. And it's a Pop Tart. So I really wanted to make a Pop Tart just because I had knit the donuts first, and I really liked the look of the tube beads as sprinkles. So I decided to freehand this piece. It's pretty simple. It's knit with DK weight on 4mm needles, and it's knit in the round. So I just cast on the stitches, joined in the round, and then I knit 25 rounds, and then I cast off the top with Kitchener stitch. And then after that, I bought some felt. It's gonna look a little bit messy because I cut into it already, but you can just buy a sheet of felt like this. I got it from Michael's. I think it was 70 cents or something like that. Super affordable. Then I just cut out an icing shape, and then I sewed the two beads on, and then I seamed it on with some of the thread. And then after that, I inserted cardboard because I wanted it to have a bit more structure, and then a little bit of stuffing on each side. So I just thought this one was really fun, and I usually don't freehand my knits. I really like to follow a pattern just because I want it to be a little bit mindless, but this one is really fun and straightforward to make. The next pattern is the chocolate chip cookie by, hopefully I'm pronouncing their name right, Hrachovec, and it's knit on worsted weight yarn on 3.75mm needles, which was a little bit of an odd size for me. I don't think I have double pointed needles in that size, but obviously with ornaments your gauge isn't that important, so it could always be adjusted. I also found that this pattern was a little bit small, so I think I would end up sizing up to a larger needle anyways, or just knit a few more increases. I just love chocolate chip cookies, so I thought these seem pretty fun to knit up, and they're also knit in the round. And And I just love the little chocolate chip detail. I know my sister likes to bake different types of cookies, so it'd be fun to experiment with. Instead of the chocolate chips, you could add different types of toppings to make it look like a different type of cookie. The next pattern is also another dessert. It's the Christmas tree cake by Clickety sticks. It's knit on Aran weight on 4mm needles, and this one's also knit flat and seamed. It's kind of like the Pop Tart, where I was just really attracted to this pattern because you were able to add beads as sprinkles. And I like how you can customize how you can knit this. So my cousin really likes to bake sugar cookies, and this just kind of reminded me of the cookies that she makes. So I think it could be fun as well to knit the pattern and make the icing different colors. It could go with the theme of your tree as well. And obviously with it being the shape of a tree, it's super festive. The next pattern is the English Breakfast Tea Bag by Hannah Backman. It's knit on fingering weight yarn on 2.25mm needles. Also don't have that needle size, at least not in double pointed needles, so I think I would just adjust a little bit to the needle size I have on hand. And this one is knit in the round. I tried to find a knitted ornament pattern for coffee. I'm more of a coffee drinker myself than tea, but I couldn't find one that I really liked. And I just thought this pattern was really cute. You could embroider maybe the tea type or the tea brand that you like on the part of the ornament that looks like the little paper tag on tea bags. And also I liked how you could hang this ornament off of the string of the tea bag. I also think that this could be a really cool bookmark. So aside from it being an ornament, I just thought the way that it's knit flat with the string, it could, yeah, be a really nice bookmark for any book lovers out there. And the last pattern in this category is the Cute Salty Pretzel by Julita Bialkowska. I hope again that I said that correctly. This is knit on fingering weight on 2.5mm needles, and I actually have one to share. So this is my pretzel that I made. This is knit in the round, and I would say it's definitely a very simple pattern to knit. So it is a very small circumference in the round, but you just knit a very long tube, and then after that you block it, and then you fold it into the shape of the pretzel, then you sew it down, and then you add these really cute beads to look like the salt on a pretzel. So I just really loved it. I thought it was really cute, and again, it's a relatively mindless pattern to knit up compared to other ornaments. The longest part after that is really sewing on the beads. So this one is a really quick knit, and I think if you wanted to knit any one of the food patterns, this one would probably be the easiest. So the next category is animals, and there are so many free knitted animal ornament patterns on Ravelry. There were so many of these online, but I was a little bit particular in the ones that I selected for this video because I kind of wanted them to have a similar look to them. So when I mean that, I wanted them to be kind of the same size and the same direction or orientation when you're looking at them. I saw there were certain patterns where you were creating the front of, or what you would see when you were looking straight on at an animal, but I wanted one that was 3D and had a bit more of a side profile. So maybe a little bit specific. And again, I wanted them to be more fun and playful rather than hyper realistic. There are a few in here that are, I think they look quite realistic, quite traditional, but most of them are really fun with pops of color. So the first pattern in this category is the Holiday Bird Ornament by Pearl Soho, and I actually have a sample here to show you. So this is knit on, it's sport weight on 2.75mm needles. And again, I picked this one because of the side profile, and I like that it was kind of looked like it was mid-flying. And if you can see by the sample pattern here, I picked this pattern because I solely wanted to copy their color combination that they did. So mine is the cream and the fuchsia, but I just think it was really fun and playful, and I totally see myself knitting more. I already am imagining one like this, but with bright blue for the wings, the tail, and the beak. And this pattern is knit in the round, which I appreciated because there wasn't the seaming at the end, but I found that it was a little bit complicated, especially at the beginning and at the end with the beak. But I found with Purl Soho patterns, they have pictures that they integrate throughout their pattern, so you have more of a step-by-step instruction, and it's very clear what your bird should be looking like. So for example, they show the distribution of stitches on the double pointed needles and where you should be picking up and how you should be picking up stitches for the wing, which I find is super helpful. So I have two more bird patterns. So the next one is the Songbird by Sarah Elizabeth Kellner. This one is knit on DK weight with 2.75 millimeter needles. I thought this one was really sophisticated. I saw so many projects on Ravelry that just use such gorgeous color combinations, and because of that you could really make this bird customized to be exactly like your favorite bird or make it really realistic. I saw some that look like a robin, a bluebird, a hummingbird, just by changing the colors for the chest, the beak, or the back. I also saw one that had beads along the wing as well, so I thought that was really fun. I believe this one is also knit in the round, but the wings are knit separately and then seamed on. So it's a little bit more complicated than the other birds I'm gonna show, but again, it's super beautiful. And this one is 5 to 6 inches long from tail to beak, so a little bit bigger than the holiday bird ornament if you're also looking for bigger ornaments for a bigger tree. The next pattern is the Robin Redbreast by Claire Garland, and this one is knit on sport weight with 3.75 millimeter needles, and this is knit flat and seamed. This one is definitely the fanciest of the three patterns. I really liked the embroidery that was along the chest of the bird, and I think it could be fun to use different embroidery threads, maybe like a bright yellow or a bright blue. I think that could be really fun. And there's someone in my life that really likes birds. they have a bird feeder outside, and they like to set out some bird feed for the birds so they can bird watch. So hopefully if I have enough time, I won't say who it is in case they're watching, but if I have enough time, I really want to try and make this for them. The fourth pattern is Hands My Hedgehog by Margaret Bloom. This pattern is knit with DK weight yarn on 3.75 millimeter needles. This one is also knit flat and seamed. And I thought this one was just so adorable. I love the use of the seed stitch along the body, and I really like that the ears are felt. So it's a lot less fiddly, I found, when I was knitting other tiny ears. I would just do that if I could and just cut out the tiny ears and attach them later with felt. So I really thought this pattern was cute. But when I was showing my boyfriend this pattern, he thought it looked like a possum. So it makes me a little bit hesitant to make this one. Personally, I don't think it looks like a possum. I just think based off of some of the Ravelry project photos, I think with the color choices, if you use like more of a gray with a white, it can maybe look like a possum. So it's no fault to the designer. I think it's mainly to do with his unfortunate possum experience he had in his backyard last year. So I totally think it's cute. It looks like a hedgehog, but I just thought that was a funny anecdote. And so for the next patterns, I feel like as knitters, we like to show our appreciation for woolly animals. So there were a lot to choose from. There were a lot of sheeps, alpacas, and lambs to choose from for this roundup, but I just picked my favorite ones. Another idea I saw on Pinterest is to print out a sheep outline onto cardboard, and then you wrap it with yarn. So I think it's a little bit quicker. It's still yarn related, but it's just a faster option. These ones though are fully knitted ornaments. So my first sheep ornament is the Fluffy Little Sheep by Lion Brand Yarn. This pattern is knit with bulky weight yarn on 4.5 millimeter needles. It's knit flat and seamed. And then the ears and legs are also worked separately, and then you seam those on top afterwards. So this one is, I think, going to be quite fiddly, but I think it's really cute. You have a cool loop stitch to try out. I've never worked a loop stitch, so think it would be really fun to work in a small project like this. I actually tried to knit this pattern first. I was just looking around if I had the yarn on my shelf, but I don't. I was using Bernat roving, which is quite a bulky weight yarn, but I think it was a little bit too bulky, so it was really hard to work the loop stitch and actually quite painful trying to push the stitches with my fingers. So I didn't end up finishing that one, and I think it just wasn't the right yarn. So I don't have any scrap yarn that's going to work at the moment for this pattern, but I have some Lopi yarn, so I think maybe once I make the project, just because I want to make sure I have enough yarn, and then after that I'll use the scraps and make this pattern. And I also, the sample photos show more of a neutral palette, but I really think the loop stitch could be fun if you work it with a super bright roving as well. The next sheep pattern is the Blackberry sheep pattern by Sue Stratford. So this is an alternative to the other sheep pattern I just showed. I really like the stitch pattern. It's kind of like a bobble or popcorn stitch. This one is knit with a DK weight yarn on 3mm needles, and it's knit flat. And I actually like, even though it's knit flat, I like this construction because with this pattern, the legs are integrated into the pattern. So you knit it in one piece, and then after, it's kind of hard to explain, but basically you're knitting the legs and the body and the head all at once, and then you seam it all together in the end. So I think it's a lot faster and easier than trying to work all the little legs, especially because with a sheep there's 4 legs, trying to knit those all separately and then attached. This is just faster. There's also a scarf on this pattern, which I think is such a nice touch that you could do with all of these animal ornaments. And I'm making this pattern now, and I think I'm gonna do a little bit of a modification from the pattern. I'm going to knit the head and the legs in another color. So I'm going to do the body in a cream color, just like what's shown in the pattern, but use like a lighter brown, I think, for the legs and the head. The next pattern is the Polar Bear by Shio Ishii, and this pattern is knit with DK weight yarn, and actually in the pattern they didn't specify what needle size, so I kind of had to guess when I was knitting it. It's in progress here, so it's not going to look exactly like a polar bear. But yeah, I still have to seam the other leg down here and the back closed. So this pattern comes with an adult and cub size. It's actually part of a book. It's part of the mini knitted safari book. I really liked all of the patterns on the cover of this book, and I think they would all make really cute ornaments if you have access to the book. So again, it's knit flat and seamed, and this was my first time knitting in that way where the legs are integrated while you're knitting flat and then you seam it all together. So I was a little bit confused while working this one because it isn't super clear, at least the way it's explained in this pattern, how you would seam it in the end. So when I was knitting, I was like, I didn't really get the get the way it was working up, but I figured it out. I just need to finish it here. And this one also features a really cute scarf as well. I just really like that detail, so I have to knit that for this bear. And yeah, this pattern is knit from the back to the front, and I feel like, I don't know, all the projects on Ravelry, the pattern pages and the sample, it does look like a polar bear, but I feel like mine kind of looks like a seal. I don't really know why. When I was showing my friends this, they also kind of thought it looked like a seal. They guessed it was a seal. So I still want to recommend this pattern because it was nice to work up, and the other projects do look like a polar bear. So I think it may be just me, the way that I knit it, or maybe I have to add the details on top and then it could look more like a polar bear. The next pattern is Andy the Llama by Amanda Berry, and I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Amanda Berry. I think she's also known as Fluff and Fuzz online because I'm going to be featuring some of her patterns in the next little bit on this roundup. She has so many great free patterns, and I just really like the way that she writes them. They're super clear, very easy to follow. So if you want to look at any more patterns after this roundup, I definitely recommend you check out this designer. So this llama pattern is knit with DK weight yarn on 3mm needles, and it's knit flat and seamed. Again, this pattern features different techniques. So the body is knit with garter stitch, the legs and the head are knit in stockinette, and the blanket is a fun slip stitch pattern, and it has a nice pop of color, so really fun to just switch up the techniques. And I thought the embroidery for the face was just really cute and really subtle, so I might try to copy that for the sheep that I'm knitting as well. And the last animal pattern is the Oliphant by Christina Bernardi Schiffman. This pattern is knit with worsted weight on 3.5mm needles, also knit flat and seamed like the polar bear and the llama. And this is a really popular pattern on Ravelry. I think there's over 490 projects. It's meant to be a stuffed toy, but I think it also works really well as a ornament. And I liked how it has all over garter stitch in the pattern. I thought it was something fun, a little bit different. The sample photo also uses different colors, so really cool marling. And I appreciate in the pattern, when I was looking at it, it had a photo of what the elephant should look like before seaming, which again I thought was really helpful because it can be a little bit confusing when it's all knit in one piece like that. All right, on to the next category, which is knitwear. I just have 5 patterns for this category. There's tons and tons of clothing patterns on Ravelry, but I just wanted to spotlight some of my favorites. So the first is the mini crop puff, which I've knit 2 of. I just thought they're very cute. It's knit with fingering weight wool on 2.25mm needles, and this one is knit in the round. I made these 2 with 2.5 just because I didn't have that size. And because of the smaller gauge, these did take a little bit of time to work up, but I just think it's really cute. And there was some familiarity when I was working these. It was very intuitive to me because I've knit quite a few raglan sweaters, so this one was pretty straightforward to make. Like I said, there's a lot of other sweater patterns on Ravelry if these ones aren't really your style. I just thought with the puff and that it's cropped, it was a little bit more like trendy and modern with patterns that I've been knitting for my own body. And I thought there was a lot of ways to experiment with this sweater. You could knit with stripes, you could do color work. There's so many options. This pattern is just a really good base. The next pattern is the mini hats pattern by Anna Nikipiriewicz. I hope I said that right again. It's knit with DK weight yarn on 3.25mm needles. These patterns are knit in the round, and there's 3 different patterns, which is why I really wanted to show this pattern. One hat uses Fair Isle, one uses, it says, Swiss darning technique, which I've never heard of before, so again, a good experiment. And the other one is stripes. There's 3 different styles of the hat in this pattern, and I especially like the one, I thought it was really funny, that has the ear flaps and the ties. I thought it was really unique. And again, you could knit the color work, or you could just knit a plain colored hat, which I think I will be doing with this pattern. The next pattern is the mini mittens pattern by Amanda Berry. This is knit with DK weight yarn on 4mm needles. It's knit flat and seamed. I worked mine in the round. I just had to consider the edge stitch in the pattern, but this pattern is really easy to modify to work in the round. I thought it was a good size, so I don't know if I mentioned it, but I actually knit one already. It's in progress. I stuffed it, and then I want to do a bit of a design on it. So I really like this pattern because I thought it was a good base. I just thought the proportion of the thumb to the rest of the hand was really cute, but there's also a good base to do a design on it. So I was thinking maybe you could do duplicate stitch and do like a bit of an initial, or again, use some beads or embroidery to do a nice little shape on this pattern. And I was seeing some other mitten patterns where you knit 2 and then you attach them together with a little string, kind of like when 2 mittens are connected that you thread through a jacket. So I just thought that could also be a really fun modification or variation on this pattern. The next pattern is the Tiny Tree Socks by Summer Lee. This one is knit with fingering weight wool on 2.25mm needles, and it's knit in the round. I still have yet to knit a pair of socks, and that includes knitted ornament socks. I don't know what my mental block is, but I just haven't had the courage, I guess, to knit this, but I think maybe it could be fun because it's small. So I could get through the sock really quickly and I guess learn the construction techniques. This pattern has, I think it was really cool. They had options for a heel flap and gusset or an afterthought heel. And there was different variations in the pattern. So you could do striped ones. I think there was a repeat for, I think it's called a lice stitch. And just you could do different heels and toe colors. So I thought this was, again, a really good canvas. And the last pattern, if you don't want to knit socks, there's the Mini Christmas Stockings by Amanda Berry. This is knit on DK weight with 3.75mm needles, and it's knit flat and seamed. I think you could also maybe knit this in the round, but not sure. I think I would just knit this one flat. It's knit bottom up from the heel, I guess, of the stocking to the cuff, so it might be a little bit complicated. So I would just knit it flat and mattress stitch it after. And I really like this pattern because I want the ornaments to look a little bit more like stockings. This one, my mom actually knit. My mom used to knit quite a bit when I was younger, and she knit this one for our family Christmas tree when I was growing up. So I don't think she knows the pattern for it. It was a really long time ago, but I just kind of want some because I want them to look like this as well. The next category is Folksy. Actually, maybe I'll just give a bit of an intro to the next two categories. So these ones are more like themes, I guess. There's a mix of different items in them. So I split them up into Folksy and more traditional motifs. So kind of like Folksy is a little bit more like cottagey, whimsical, and the second one that's traditional is more like your classic Christmas motifs and shapes. So with this Folksy category or theme, I have 3 different heart patterns that I wanted to share. I don't know if I'm going to knit all 3, but I just really like the look of all of them, and I thought that they were quite distinct as well, so I wanted to mention them. So the first one is the No Sew Heart by Mary Ann Walters. This pattern didn't specify the yarn weight actually, but looking at the pattern photos, I think it's DK weight knit on 3mm needles. And this one is knit in the round from the bottom up. And I thought it was also cool because it includes instructions for knitting 2 hearts at a time. So I think it's a pretty quick knit, and if you wanted to get as many hearts as you could, or just knit them as efficiently, you could just knit 2 at the same time. And yeah, there's not really much else to say about this pattern. I think it's a really quick knit, and I like that the heart shape is really defined with 2 points at the top. I found that some of them I was seeing, the heart looks a little bit shallow, so in certain photos it kind of looked more like a triangle, so I liked how this one had more of a defined point. The next pattern is Hearts by Marie Wallen. This one is knit with DK weight yarn on 3.25mm needles, and this one is knit flat and seamed together with a blanket stitch. I just thought it looked really fun, really folksy, and I really like the look of the blanket stitch along the edge. The pattern suggested actually stuffing these hearts with lavender for scent, which I think is such a great idea. I was thinking maybe you could do other things, like maybe you could stuff it with pine or pine needles. I don't know if that's a thing, but to just get more of a Christmassy vibe. And I really like the embroidered design on the top. I've never done embroidery before. I'm very beginner at it. So I don't really know how to do this exactly, but the pattern says it's chain stitch, and I think if I would try it again, it could be a good introduction to that type of stitch. And the third heart pattern is the Felted Heart, which is a pattern by Drops Design. It uses super bulky weight yarn on 9mm knitting needles. And this one is knit in the round, and it uses Drop Snow. So I think my Bernat roving, which I tried to use for the sheep, could be a good substitute for this pattern. I've never tried felting before, so again, a good experiment. And based off of the way that they describe the pattern, I think felting, it seems like it shrinks quite a lot after you felt it. So it uses actually quite a bit of yarn compared to other ornament patterns. So if you're looking at this pattern, you just might need a full skein for it. The next pattern is another Amanda Berry pattern. It's called Rainbow, and it's knit with fingering weight wool on 3.25mm needles. This pattern is knit flat and seamed, and I like how this one was stuffed, and you can really experiment with different colors. So I've been using my yarn scraps or leftovers for these ornaments, but because you use very little for this pattern, you could use your scraps of scraps or your leftovers of leftovers after you've knit the ornaments, and really tie in the different colors you use for other ornaments in this one. So I thought this could be, yeah, a really fun way to use up everything and all the yarn that you have. The next pattern is the first ornament that I ever made, and I featured it in my last podcast. It is the London Double Decker Bust by, again, Amanda Berry. This pattern is knit with DK weight yarn on 2.75mm needles, and then it's knit flat and seamed. I knit a larger version, so I knit this pattern on 4mm needles, and I almost doubled the stitch count. So it's knit flat and then you fold it, you seam it as well. So by doubling it, I got a wider bust. And I wanted to find other transit related ornament projects, just because I really like public transit or urbanist type things. But I couldn't really find anything, honestly, other than this bust. So I might try and modify it if I want to knit a second version and knit one that looks like a TTC bus. If you're not from Toronto, that's our transit system bus. I thought it could be really funny. So maybe if I knit the second one, I'm going to make it look like the TTC. The next pattern is the Little Cottage by Aga Tutak, and this one is knit with DK weight on 2.5mm needles, and it's knit in the round. I like how this pattern, I thought it was really cute just because it's a cottage, but I liked the pentagonal shape. So you knit increases before you knit the decreases to shape the top of the house. So I just thought it was a really cute shape. I actually knit one and I finished it yesterday. So this is my first cottage. That was really fun. Yeah, you can just also experiment with different types of decoration or things that you would add to your cottage. So I alternated with these gold beads, and then I just embroidered a little door as well. The next three patterns are all mushroom patterns, so I'm gonna go through them quite quickly. I just thought it would be really fun if you had different types of fungi on your tree if you're into that. So yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of a variation, but I'll try to go through these a little bit quicker. So the first one is the Christmas Toadstools by Maureen Curley of Ginger Cat Designs. This pattern is knit with DK weight yarn on 3.25mm needles. It's knit in the round from the bottom up, so it was a little bit fiddly to work up because you cast on a few stitches and then you do a lot of rapid increases. But I just really like the shape. I kind of think of Toad from Mario. And again, this is a really good pattern to use scraps of scraps. So the bottom part for the stem of the mushroom uses very little yarn for the cream part of this mushroom. So again, save your scraps, save anything that you might think is insignificant, but it can come in handy for these parts of the ornament where you just need a little bit. So I've knit 3 of them just because they're super quick to work up. 3 different versions here. I think this would be a really nice pattern for variegated yarns. So for example, I use Noro Silk Garden Sock Solo, just the green part of that yarn. This one is a hand-dyed, I think a DK weight hand-dyed yarn from Artfill. And then this one I used like a plain color brown. This was actually from my April cardigan. But instead of French knots, I did little clusters of glass seed beads. So I think it's really fun. I might do it for the other ones as well. If I haven't already mentioned, this is a really popular pattern on Ravelry. I was totally inspired by one maker. I'm gonna use their photo for the sample picture here. It's Spun Honey Knits, and they use a duplicative stitch on the mushroom, but I just really liked her palette for these mushrooms. And the next 2 mushroom patterns are the Magic Mushroom by Tatiana Grigorian, which is knit with worsted weight on 4mm needles. It has the same construction as the other one, so knit bottom up in the round. I really like the shape of this one, how it's a little bit more curved and the French knots, and I just thought the name was really fitting. And then the last one is the Earl Grey Mushroom, also by Tatiana Grigorian. It's knit with Aran weight yarn on 4mm needles. I really like this shape because of the long stalk on the mushroom. And actually when I was looking into the pattern, I thought it was really cool because the pattern includes instructions for dyeing the cap or the top of the mushroom. You steep it in tea, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, you knit the cap and then you dye it in tea. You just leave it for, I think they said 10 to 20 minutes. And then once it dries, then you knit the rest of the mushroom. So another little experiment. And my last category is the more traditional Christmas ornaments. So the first one is one that I am working on right now. And I didn't get to finishing it before filming this video, but I thought it was still okay to show. It is the Stripy Tree by Amanda Berry. It's knit with DK weight on 3.5mm needles. It's knit from the bottom up and flat, but I modified it to knit in the round. And the pattern features two versions, a shorter one and a taller one. And I really like the stripes. I think it's so fun. And the buttons that are featured on the pattern are really playful. So I think once I finish this, I'm definitely gonna sew those on as well. There are a ton of other tree patterns as well on Ravelry. I just thought this one kind of fit with the vibe of the other patterns that I showed, and it's the one that I'm gonna be knitting as well. So if this one isn't your style, because I know it's a little bit more, I guess, unique. If you want something a little bit more traditional, then there's definitely so many more patterns online. The next one is the Christmas Cherub by Drops Design. This pattern is knit with DK weight yarn on 3mm needles. This is knit in the round from the bottom up, and then you knit the wings and then you seam to attach it. The pattern also features two versions. So there's a garter stitch version and then a lace stitch version. And totally going off of the photos on Ravelry, but it's knit in like this very light cream color and with mohair. So I think it's just very fitting. It's very angelic. It's very elegant. I find that Drops patterns are, even though there's so many of them, it's a great resource. I do find them sometimes a little bit confusing to read. I don't know what it is. I think maybe because they're just a little bit too concise. Sometimes I just find that a little bit hard to follow along. But when I was looking through this one, I thought it was pretty straightforward. And there's also video tutorials on the pattern as well. The next pattern is the Felted Ball Ornament by Purl Soho. It says on Ravelry it's knit with sport weight yarn, but they have many different combinations of yarn and they have different needle sizes. So it really guides you through, if you're using a certain yarn combination, what needle size to use to get the size that you're looking for. So the pattern has two different sizes, a larger one and a smaller one. And again, this pattern is a felted pattern as well. So I thought it could be really fun. I thought it was really cute. There's two different parts for the pattern. So there's the bell and then there's the, I guess, the ringer part in the middle. They use a felted ball, but I think if you don't have one, you could just use like maybe a wooden bead, or I think you could even make this yourself by like maybe winding a ball and then also trying to felt it. Not entirely sure, but I think there's substitutes you could use. And like I said, with the other Purl Soho pattern, I really like the way that Purl Soho walks you through the patterns with all of the pictures and the step-by-step guide. So it even includes instructions for how you would felt it in the washing machine and a photo tutorial for the knitting and assembling. So really, really helpful. And we've gotten to the last pattern of the pattern roundup. It's Chloe's Cushions by Yamagara. And this is knit with DK weight yarn on 2.75mm needles. And the designer mentioned on Ravelry that they came up with this pattern idea because of some knitted swatches they were doing for a sweater. So they knit the swatches and they didn't want it to go to waste, so they decided to make a pincushion or an ornament. So that kind of got me thinking of other swatches that I've made. I might try to make them into ornaments actually. I thought it was a great idea. This pattern though has three designs, three color work designs, and they have charts in the pattern. It's knit in the round from the bottom up. So you start with a provisional cast on and then you cast off with a 3-needle bind off. And since it's a color work piece, I don't have a lot of experience knitting color work. So I thought that this could be, again, another way for me to practice it. It could be a little bit challenging on DPNs, but it would be helpful just to get more color work experience, like following a chart, the right tension, knitting with floats. So if I have time, I'm definitely going to try and knit this pattern as well. Okay, and we've reached the end of the pattern roundup, but I actually have 3 more honorable mentions I wanted to share. So these ones are not knitted, but they're still yarn related, and I think they're a little bit faster to work up. So if you do have more scraps and you just want to use up more of your yarn, or you really like the look of these, I just really wanted to mention them. So I've seen quite a few pom-pom ornaments. A lot of them had like really fun colors. It kind of reminded me of knit collages work with different textures, different colors, really fun pops of color. And then I also saw some where they knit a pom-pom and then they also knit a tassel and then they attach the two together. I don't know if I do find some that have a specific tutorial, then I'll link it down below, but I was kind of just looking on Pinterest and I saw these and I just thought that they were really fun and you can definitely make them with yarn. The second honorable mention is yarn wrapped ornaments. So I mentioned it in the animals theme, but I saw on Pinterest that you could cut out different types of shapes that you want on cardboard, or there's also wood shapes that you can get from the craft store. And then you can, so once you cut out that shape on your cardboard or you have that wooden shape, then you attach the yarn with hot glue or tape, and then you just wrap the ornament, and you can do it in a really fun design. You could use a multicolored yarn. I thought it was really cool. And it's a pretty quick way to make ornaments, and you can use up some more scraps as well. And the last honorable mention is the needle and skein ornament by Originally Lovely. So I don't know if there's a specific written pattern. I came across this through a video tutorial on their YouTube page. And I just thought this one was really cute for all the knitters out there. So it's a little tiny skein and then tiny knitting needles as well. So the video tutorial online shows how to twist the yarn into a skein, how to create the knitting needles out of toothpicks. So it's really clever, and I thought maybe the knitters would appreciate this pattern out there as well. Okay, and that was the roundup. I know that this was quite a lot of information and a ton of patterns, but I hope that it was good inspiration for you all. I'm well on my way to have my ornaments for my tree, but definitely want to make more. So hopefully this basket keeps growing and growing, because I just think they're so fun, they're so special, and a great way to use up all your yarn, a great exercise of creativity, and also just learning different techniques. So let me know down in the comments which ones were your favorites. Maybe if there's other knitting patterns that you'd suggest, I'd love to hear them down below. All right, and until my next video, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you.